morning, everyone. Welcome. It's the final episode of FPC Radio Live here in 2022. That's right, it's December 30th, the penultimate day of the 2020 calendar year. I love using that word, John. Whenever I can, I try to fit it in there. I think I've said that before on the show. It's one of my favorite words to use. So, and I feel like it makes me sound smart. So
it does, absolutely. Or I just go with second to last if that's the case.
Yeah. Fair enough. Look, it's obviously New Year's Eve is tomorrow, and I don't, again, it's end of the year. We're getting ready to turn the calendar to 2023. All that crap. Ugh. Let me put it this way, John. I've always thought, I don't get me wrong. New Year's is. It's a great way to end a month, and it changes things up from the other 11 months out of the year. But I always felt like it was the most overrated and overhyped, especially when I was younger, party day. You're supposed to have this great time on New Year's. You know what I did on New Year's every single year? I watched the Three Stooges. And I can't wait to do that. I have every single DVD of the Stooges in my living room. I can watch it whenever I want, but there's something about watching the marathon on New Year's Eve that I always loved, and I always it brings me back. I think it started back on the old UPN 38 up in near Boston. So
yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, I mean, I agree because I look at it. I'll be turning 60 in 2023, and I haven't drank in 30 years. And even when I was drinking, which was pretty much throughout my 20s, let me tell you what, I was the Tom Brady of drinkers. I was incredible. I mean, in terms of
heard
consumption.
Some stories about him drinking. Yeah. He's actually pretty good, apparently.
Oh yeah, so. I would have. He and I would have been boys back in the day, I'm sure. But I had to give it up, obviously, for health reasons and mental reasons. But even while I was in my drinking stages, I never looked at New Year's Eve as anything different than just another night, because I kind of drank like it was always New Year's Eve anyway. But you're right. Everybody gets all excited for it. You wake up the next day, you're dealing with massive hangover, and it's just the next day. It's the next year. I get it, but it's almost like when you do these top 10 lists. Why not just have a top 9 list or a top 11 list? Why not? Why does it have to be 10?
Well, look, for the sake of not sounding like a curmudgeon, another one of my favorite words. I love that word. I'm not bah humbug on New Year's. I've had fun on New Year's. I'm talking about more or less the I guess the hype of it, because I always think of this. I'm sure the movie's named New Year's Eve or something like that, something stupid, but it was some teenage movie, and one of the taglines in the promo, and I'll always remember this: never saw the movie, don't care to see the movie, never even thought for 1 second about seeing the movie. But one of the taglines from one of the kids, or one of the quotes from one of the kids, was "This is the most important night of our life." And I don't know. I always laughed. I mean, these are just things that kind of humor me. But I always felt okay, New Year's Eve, it's all right, it's fun, it's exciting. You will never, ever catch me in Times Square. Ever. That, to me, that I will be a curmudgeon. Every year you see everyone gathering there, and I'm thinking to myself, what's the appeal of that? You're freezing. It's really kind of boring. I mean, what really goes on except for a lot of loud noises and yelling and flashing lights? And then at the end of it, you're stuck after a very let's put it this way, very underwhelming ball drop. You're basically stuck in the middle of Times Square at midnight, freezing your rear ends off around thousands and thousands and thousands of people. There's nothing appealing about that, John. I'd rather go to a someone's house, a gathering, or do something else. You're never ever going to catch me in the middle of Times Square, unless John, I have an escape route, and by that I mean a helicopter basically dropping a rope down to me that's just going to pick me up out of that group and just take me away as soon as everything's over. So
sounds like you're exiting Saigon in the mid 70s, right? So yeah, because it's pretty similar to that.
Well, that influenced how, when I thought this through, I was well, how can I, I got to make a dramatic exit, of course, but of course, and it, not only is it dramatic, but it's efficient too, because again, and I don't want to wade through that. Anyone who's ever been to, and I'm sure this is the same in a lot of cities that have similar setups, but anyone who's ever been to a Red Sox or Bruins or Celtics game, and you have to cram yourself in the T. I mean, look, I have. It's been a while. I live down in Florida now, so it's been a while since I went to a Red Sox game. But there is nothing like going onto that outbound train after a game and just like hoping and praying that you have enough air to breathe inside
Right.
the T. And that's kind of what New Year's is, without like the satisfaction of actually going to it. So
With everybody around you inebriated and smelling of booze,
Oh,
right?
God,
And if
yeah.
you're not drinking anymore, that's a double whammy for you. Yeah, so I'm not a big crowds person. That's why I very rarely would go to the Boston Marathon. Fortunately, I did attend the 2013 Boston Marathon and was right kind of, I wouldn't say in the middle of what took place, but I was a couple hundred yards from each of the bombs because we were on our way to Daisy Buchanan's to do a live broadcast. So
right.
I was just kind of hanging out on Boylston, getting ready to kind of cross over, get to, Daisy Buchanan's, and then all hell broke loose. And it was just one of the most surreal events that I've ever seen, obviously. But yeah, I'm not a big crowds person there, especially like when you're relying on public transportation. All of a sudden, you get whatever number of people at Fenway Park, 35,000 people, at least half, if not 2/3, use public transportation. So you get like 20,000 people exiting all at the same time, getting onto the Green Line trains of all things, which are small, cramped, old, with a million stops on them. So yeah, it's not the best setting.
Yeah, the worst part was too, like where I lived, I used to get on at it was one of the first stops on the Green Line.
On the with Leechmere or Science Park, that's in Cambridge.
No. Outbound.
The other end.
Outbound. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm drawing a blank on it, but
Riverside.
Yes, Riverside. Thank you. Anyway,
I know my tea.
Yeah.
I know my tea.
And for anyone who's listening that's never been in the city of Boston, I apologize for making you have no idea what we're talking about, but as our good friend Joel Shapiro writes, the MBTA is a joy to ride, and I'm sure there's a lot of sarcasm in that text. But yeah, I would get on that train, and that's a good 45-minute plus ride to get into South Boston, South Station, North Station, that area. What I ended up doing, because I was doing this long before GPS was readily available, so like you couldn't just like go find a different way. What I ended up doing, John, was going to Leechmere. I decided, you know what? I can skip the expensive parking at the stadium. I can skip the traffic there, and I can skip the horribly long T ride and just drive right into Leechmere, park, pay the MBTA price for parking there, and then just ride 2 stops in. And when it came time to leave, I would be sitting on the other side of the track watching thousands of people cram themselves into one train trying to go outbound. And here I was taking 2 stops inbound with like an entire seat to myself. So
good idea. Yeah, that's a great way to deal with TD Garden. Fenway's a little bit different because it's closer into the city, or deeper into the city, if you will. As far as the MBTA, look, I've ridden it pretty much my entire life, and it for the most part it's pretty good, but there are some horror stories. One time about 6 or 7 years ago, I visited friends in Portland, Maine. So I took a train from Portland, Maine, back to Boston. From Portland to North Station took me about an hour and 45 minutes. To get from North Station to Somerville took me an hour and 45 minutes, because I had to go from the Green Line to the Orange Line, then wait for a bus, and then wait for another bus. And it was like, Portland to North Station was pretty easy. And I had a big, nice train and snack bar and all that stuff. So I said, this is going to be pretty easy. Well, it wasn't.
Yeah. And trust me, that's the worst part. And like, like when I'm ready to leave, I'm like, like I want to leave. Like I have a certain amount of time that I'm like, capable of dealing with situations like that. Then I'm like, you know what? I'm ready to go. That's why I always have to drive. There's a sense of control here, John. Clearly, I mean, I have control issues. As long as I have it, I'm okay. But that's why I always like to drive. I always like to have that exit strategy, so to speak. We're getting back to the exit strategy. So naturally, I have a bag hidden in one of my walls here that has a stuff ready to go just in case. So.
Are you telling us now something we don't know about, or that we should report to the authorities here?
Okay,
I'll find out. Okay,
you'll find out. You'll find out. You'll get a letter.
All right.
Actually, no. You'll get a postcard postmarked from right near the border in Texas, and then you'll understand what I'm talking about.
There you go. Hopefully, I don't get a knock on the door from the authorities.
No.
Okay.
Definitely not. So, anyways, I don't know how the hell we got on talking about the MBTA of Boston of all things, but I apologize to anyone who doesn't live in the greater Boston area and that has no idea what we're talking about. So naturally, let's shift over to the NBA real quick because we're gonna get a chance to talk about this. I want to ask you about Luka's triple double the other day because he followed it up last night with another triple double, 21, 7, and 7 in the first half. Okay. That casually just whatever. Okay, good for you, Luka. But let's go back to the other one, 60, 20, and 20. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, 60, 21, and 10.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm talking so fast. I'm looking at the Sports Center up here on the screen. 60, 21, and 10. Just put it in perspective, John, because that's just it just seems it seems like that's just impossible, at least now.
Pretty much. I mean, any one of those is a great night, right? You score 60, that's an all-time great night. You get 21 rebounds as a 6'7" point guard. That's extraordinary. 10 assists is pretty much his average. I've said it a million times. I think he's the most skilled player in the league. Is he the best player in the league? I still think yes is the best player in the league. I think you could throw Jason Tatum and the other guys into that discussion. Luka's not great defensively, although he's among the top 5 in steals. He's getting better defensively. But on the offensive end, there's nothing he can't do. He's an exquisite passer. He's an improving shooter. He's in a million different ways to score. And he's also a top flight rebounder, especially at the point guard position. I mean, he's a guy who's going to average close to a triple-double this year while leading the league in scoring. But to do that, it's never been done before. 60, 20, 10 has never been done in the league before. Again, the stats weren't as kept as at the level they are now. I mean, Chamberlain had games where it was like 73-38, but who knew how many? He may have had 22 blocks in a game. They didn't become official stat. Blocks didn't become an official stat till 1973-74. So who knows if Russell and Chamberlain weren't putting up triple doubles on a nightly basis based on blocks. Yeah. But no, what Luka did the other night was extraordinary. And again, it wasn't a blowout. He needed to do what he did to win in overtime, because he doesn't have a lot around him. It reminds me so much of LeBron in his first, 5-6 years in Cleveland, where it was LeBron and a bunch of other guys, and he would get them to the conference finals and would win 60 games in the regular season, but he couldn't really advance any further because he'd run into teams that were just better. That's kind of what Luka is right now. I mean, Christian Wood's his second best player. I don't think there's a bigger gap in the NBA between the first top player in a team and the second best player on that particular team as there is with Luka and Christian Wood. So I mean, like Jason Tatum's extraordinary, but Jaylen Brown's also an all-star. Giannis is extraordinary, but Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday are both all-stars. I mean, it's Luka and the guys. What he did the other night was just incredible.
Yeah, and look, I was watching the highlights. I obviously didn't see the game live, but I'm just sitting here thinking like, hey, it just seems like you just have to have a hectic pace the entire game from start to finish to accumulate that much. And to your point, I mean, it was necessary. This wasn't, and I don't know if that makes it even more impressive because it was necessary and he did do it. This MVP race I think is one of the more fascinating ones we've seen in the NBA for the last handful of years because I think there's a lot of players involved in this, and obviously Luka is one of them. And you have really a good case for several, and I feel like it. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like at this point in the season, usually you've started to see a few players kind of separate and separate from the pack. But I feel like you have like 3-4 guys right now that you could legitimately make a case for MVP. And I don't think any of their cases have kind of cooled at all at this point. And we're about to turn to 2023.
No, Joel Embiid is tied with Luka leading the league in scoring. He's unstoppable. Nikola Jokic is playing at the same level, if not higher, than he has the last 2 years when he won back-to-back MVPs. We've already talked about Tatum and Giannis and Luka. Those are 5 guys right there. The Brooklyn Nets are playing at a very high level, and Kevin Durant's so darn efficient, it's incredible. if Steph Curry hadn't been hurt and his team had played a little better, he would have been in the mix. The thing is, Ian, there's so many more possessions now in basketball. As you said, it's played at a faster pace. Mm-hmm. And with all the three-point shooting, there's just more opportunities to score, rebound, get assists. The pace is incredible. So you're going to see more scoring than you've seen in 25, 30 years. Right now, there's 7 guys in the league averaging 30 or more points. That's extraordinary. There's also 19 guys averaging 25 or more points per game. That's unheard of.
I saw just right before we got on the air, and I didn't take note of what the game was, but I saw someone hit it 5 seconds into the game. Literally off the tip off,
right.
Took the ball, turned and shot like it was like, had 1.5 seconds on the clock and you're trying to inbound and get a shot off.
Right.
Like, so like your point, the quickness of the score, it's great, but I mean, it creates all these players that again are just dominating in their own way and doing it at such a high level.
Yeah, I mean, it was like that years ago. I think this is what people don't understand. The league in the 60s played an incredible. Mm-hmm. I always bring up Elgin Baylor because I think he's the most overlooked great player in the history of the NBA. He averaged 27 points and 14 rebounds per game. Mm-hmm. Averaged that, right? And Jerry West was a guy who averaged 27 points per game, but the possessions were so bountiful that you just saw more scoring. It was up and down, up and down. The Celtics kind of invented the fast break. That's how they played. Then things slowed down a little bit, especially in the 90s, which I thought was the ugliest decade ever in the history of basketball. The early 2000s also was like that. But I'd say since about 2012, 2013, and you got to give a lot of credit to Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. They kind of brought the sport to where it is now, and they're successful at it. So teams try to copy that. They're playing at such a fast pace that we're going to see a lot of these numbers that look incredible. I mean, 60, 21, and 10, that's just like, that doesn't happen.
The Pacers beat the Cavaliers last night 135 to 126.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not, that's not something that, that's not something that, would shock you from a score at this point. You're just, oh, yeah, okay. That makes sense. A lot of scoring. Got it. I mean, I think a couple games into Steph Curry's absence, Golden State lost something like that, where they still put up over 110 points without Steph Curry, and it's that's how the NBA functions now. So before we get to our NFL picks, and obviously we do want to do that, the Celtics seem to they kind of got out of their little funk there. They had that West Coast trip that started with Golden State. They lost 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 or something like that. They've won a couple nice games now. Obviously, last night against the Clippers. You think they got over this little funk? Do you think there's any long-term concern about this team? Because obviously you get off to such a hot start. You have a lot of pressure to get back to the final. You're looked at as one of the teams with one of the leading MVP candidates. Is there any concern with the Celtics term?
No, the only thing is the East is so deep. I think there's 5 legitimate contenders in the East. Obviously, the Celtics, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Brooklyn, and Philadelphia all are title contenders. So they're going to kind of beat up on each other. But yeah, I think they got out of that ugly spell, which they did lose 5 out of 6. The last, they lost 2 games to Golden State and the Clippers on the West Coast. They beat the Lakers in a game that it was a near miracle. They were down 13 with 4 minutes left, and they pulled it out. Then they come back home and they lost back-to-back games to Orlando and then Indiana. And you're like, what the hell's wrong with this team? But every team goes through this stretch. What they did on Christmas Day, Milwaukee was impressive. And last night was impressive because the Clippers, when they have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, are certainly a title contender, and they were able to win that game last night. So I think they'll be just fine. I still worry about managing minutes for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, because if they're playing the type of minutes they are now, how are they going to be in May and June when the games mean so much? That's a big concern there. But no, they're the best team in basketball right now. But I don't think they've lapped the field. I think there's probably a half a dozen teams that are right on their heels. Yeah,
and look, I agree with you. It was I stayed up for that Lakers game. Surprisingly, that was it was late, but I'm glad it worked out pretty well in the end. But it's funny because, a few weeks ago we talked about the Celtics and, their hockey counterpart, the Bruins, and both teams off to a very hot start. And not that I believe that they've left the competition, but, I think we asked the question, which team is more sustainable? And I honestly can't remember what our answers were. I think I might have said the Bruins, but I don't know. But regardless, you're looking at the Celtics right now as a team that, like you said, is very well one of the top title contenders in the conference and in the league, likely the best team in the league. But there is a lot of competition. You look over at the Bruins, and I don't know if they're going to lose 5 more games this entire season at the way they're going. And that
It's incredible.
It's I mean, it really is truly incredible. They just win. That's it. That's all they do is just win hockey games. They're down by 2 goals, doesn't matter. They have a sluggish first period, doesn't matter. They let you know what I mean. They have this this incredible game between, and this is the last thing I'll say before we move on to our football picks, because we're gonna have to get these in before the end of the show. The game the other night that went to overtime and the Bruins actually lost in a shootout. It was a damn shame that game ended in a shootout, and one of the reasons why I hate it, because that game between it was Ottawa and Boston, back and forth, back and forth. You saw incredible goaltending. I always felt that it was better for the NHL to go 10 minutes of 3-on-3, and then I'd live with a tie after that, because I feel that more often than not, some team is going to score a goal on 3-on-3 with 10 minutes, for 10 minutes, up to 10 minutes of game time. And the better part about it too is from just going to a shootout. My biggest thing with a shootout or any sort of thing of that nature when it comes to deciding a game, a sports game, is that it doesn't involve any strategy. And by that I mean in the spirit of the game, there's no strategy. It's just a skills competition, and that's not what we're striving for. With 3-on-3, and this is something I've seen and you've seen evolve since it's been implemented. Strategy to it. There's different types of ways that teams are attacking and formulating their offenses and combining their lines, and it's fascinating to me. Now, it's not something to see for 60 minutes, no, but when you're talking about trying to determine a winner, certainly in the regular season, I would never want to change regular playoff overtime at all. But when you're trying to determine a winner, this is a legitimate way to do it. And I was so disappointed after such a great game by both teams. And this has nothing to do with the Bruins losing. I would have been disappointed had they won in a shootout, just because I feel like it just cheapens everything so much. It's just such a deflating sense of, I don't know, just a deflating feeling watching a game like that end in a shootout. But nonetheless, the Bruins are great. The Celtics are great. And it really makes up for a lackluster Patriots season. However, John, this is how I'm going to segue to football. In my mind, this works and makes sense. The Patriots have a big time matchup with the all of a sudden reeling, teetering Miami Dolphins, and yeah, Kyle knows my hate for the shootout. He just commented on our Facebook page, I'm sorry, YouTube. But I'm past that. I'll save those rants for after the football season, because I'm going to get really worked up over them, assuming that they continue to show their ugly heads. But anyways, Patriots, Dolphins, one of the many games we're going to pick here in just a minute, because we're getting down to the nitty gritty here, John. We have 2 weeks left. Crazy as it sounds, 2 weeks of the regular season are left, and some pretty big games here. Ones that we probably would have not thought would be so important at this time of the year.
Yeah, I mean, because there's been surprises. Obviously, you would have thought that Tampa would have already wrapped up the NFC South, and yet they're going to play Carolina. Yeah, and if two things go their way and they play a little bit better, they probably have that division wrapped up, after Thanksgiving. But here we are
Mike
after Christmas.
Evans catches that deep touchdown pass. You know what I mean?
Yeah, against Carolina. Yeah, several months ago. Yeah, maybe it's a completely different game against Carolina, but that's a big game. Jaguars and Titans are going to decide the AFC South next week, so Jacksonville can rest a lot of their players if they want. Although they're playing so well, I think they maybe want to keep playing. I think if you start resting guys, you get that momentum back next week when you face the Titans. Maybe there's something about the two Southern divisions in football where there's no team with a winning record, but they're going to be represented in the playoffs nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, that's fine. And I know I've seen this been brought up before, and it kind of makes the rounds every time something like this happens. But the question is, does a division winner, should they be guaranteed a home game? And I'm like, absolutely yes. Like I understand the optics of the Buccaneers or the Panthers hosting the Cowboys currently right now 12-4 in the wild card round. And I'm like, no, that's fine because they won their division. If you all of a sudden remove that your division, then winning your division becomes meaningless. And then it's just a matter of like, can you overtake teams in your conference? Because winning the division, you should be guaranteed a home playoff game, and you should be seeded. Now, does that mean some years that you're going to get divisions where a team is 7-9 or 8-9 or 8-8 or whatever? Yeah, it happens. Deal with it. It doesn't happen often. You know what I mean? So I ended up, they should, stop guaranteeing home games for no, that. Then you just cheapen the whole division race, and it becomes kind of meaningless at that point. So
it happened to Tampa. It happened to Tampa 2 seasons ago. They were 11-5, a wild card team. They had to go to Washington, which was 7-9, which had won the NFC East. So now it's going to be reversed. If Tampa wins the South at 8-9, then 12-4 or 13-4 or whatever that shows up on wild card weekend. In theory, with the better team than Tampa, they should win. But it's the Cowboys against Tom Brady in the postseason. That gives you a moment to pause and think that Tampa will have a chance. Well, and it always bounces back. Remember the NFC West back in 2010 was supposed to be this god-awful division, and it was. And 2 years later, San Francisco and Seattle were facing off in the NFC Championship game, I believe, in 2013. So, these things turn around quickly.
Yeah, and look, I mean, of all the teams that are going to come in on wild card weekend, the Cowboys are probably the Buccaneers' best draw because we've talked about this for now. Dak Prescott is just turning the ball over at such a high rate right now. And one of the exceptions was last night was not his fault. I'm not going to blame him for that. But the second one surely was, and he also fumbled the ball. So I believe 15 interceptions, and he's missed 5 games. That's deeply concerning if you're the Cowboys, because I don't think they're great enough on defense, or I don't think they have good enough players surrounding Dak Prescott to elevate that. Like, they have a good team, they have talent on both sides of the ball, but you're also assuming that all that talent is going to be held together by an elite quarterback. And what you're getting is not elite quarterback play, because elite quarterbacks do not turn the ball over at the rate that he's doing it for as long as he's doing it. Like, you'll have times where, like, guys will throw a few picks over the course of 2 games or whatever, and then it kind of, they settle down, whatnot. This has been, I believe, 6 straight games now with at least 1 interception. And I know there's been multiple stretches of multiple games with multiple interceptions. So if you're the Buccaneers, if you could just somehow, John, figure out some consistency on offense, and maybe getting Ryan Jensen back is going to be a huge coup for that. I think he is going to help greatly. But if you can just find some balance on offense, you can beat the Cowboys. And then look, all bets are really off. At that point, you just got to, take it week by week. And, it doesn't matter what you finish, whether you're 9-8 or 8-9, it doesn't matter. All those things that we talked about all regular season don't matter if you can put it together in playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see when that matchup takes place, because I do, maybe it's giving away my pick a little bit, but it's the second game we're going to talk about. Maybe it's giving away my pick, but I do believe Tampa's going to win the division, and they will end up hosting the Cowboys. So, all right, let's dive into it, because like I said, I keep saying we're going to run out of time, and at this rate, we probably will, but we're going to try to go quick as we can here. New Orleans at Philadelphia. Philadelphia, obviously, coming off only their second loss of the season to those Cowboys without Jalen Hurts. Not sure if he's going to be in there yet, but regardless, it doesn't matter. Hurts, Gardner Minshew, I think the Eagles are going to bounce back at home against New Orleans. So give me the Eagles.
Yeah, the Eagles defense has struggled, but I don't think New Orleans has the weapons to exploit it. Philadelphia wins, clinches the division, number 1 overall seed, then they can make sure that Jalen Hurts is healthy for the postseason. Philadelphia is the pick.
Tampa Bay hosting Carolina for the division, essentially. Well, if Tampa loses, they don't technically lose the division, but if they win, they can clinch the NFC South and lock up a playoff spot. And I do think they do it. Like I said, I mean, they're running out of time to make a statement on this season. But fortunately for them, the time has been extended until week 17. So I think they kind of pull it together. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be pretty. But I think the Buccaneers come away with a win.
They'll find a way to win. They will.
Next, Miami at New England. Like I said, all of a sudden, very intriguing matchup. Miami Dolphins are in the 7th seed right now in the AFC with an 8-7 record. And they're heading to New England, who has a 7-8 record and could make things very, very messy at that bottom of the wild card or at the bottom of the playoff race. I think New England wins. I have no reason to, technical reason to believe it other than I think Miami is struggling bad. They're going to be without Tua. Teddy Bridgewater is going to get the start. And I think the Patriots defense is good enough to neutralize Tyreek Hill. And that doesn't mean keep him off the board, but I think they can neutralize him. So with all that, I got to figure this is going to be one of those weeks that they can pull something through. So give me the Patriots.
Yep, I like the Patriots as well. Without Tua, I think Miami's offense has shown that it struggles with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. Bridgewater's never faced Belichick before. We know Belichick's really good against quarterbacks he's never faced before, and I think he'll be able to pull some magic out on Sunday and get the win in probably a very low-scoring, close game, but they'll take the Patriots.
All right, next we have Cleveland at Washington. I like Cleveland in this one. I think Washington, obviously having to go back to Carson Wentz. I don't hate on Carson Wentz. I just, I think he is what he is. I like Cleveland in this one. What's probably going to be one of the uglier games of the week. So.
Yeah, doesn't it sound like just one of those bad weather, rainy, raw, whatever? I'll take Cleveland as well because I need Cleveland to beat Washington so that my Packers can sneak into the playoffs.
Yes, of course. And this has nothing to do with you picking Cleveland to go to the Super Bowl last year, right?
Yeah, maybe I'll be late on that.
Yeah,
or a few years early on that, actually. Again, I had the right state, just the wrong city.
Yeah, well, hey. Sorry, one of these times you'll get it right. Indianapolis at the Giants. I took the Giants. Again, it's Indianapolis. They're not a good team. So even though the Giants, have had their struggles at times, they're still better than Indianapolis. So I don't know. I like the Giants, and again, I think this is going to be another kind of sloppy game. Nothing too high scoring, pretty close, but yeah, give me the New York Football Giants.
I'll take the Colts in a minor upset.
Oh, there you go.
No particular reason other than just be a little different.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, it's always going to be different. Jacksonville at Houston. Jacksonville. They'll likely, like you said, maybe rest some of their guys if they're a little banged up, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think Jacksonville's just a better team than Houston. So.
Jacksonville's been playing so well, I don't think they want to take their foot off the gas. So I think they'll take care of business against a division rival, right? And then they'll just bring that momentum into next week's showdown against the Titans. I'll take Jacksonville.
All right. Next we have Chicago at Detroit. Again, the Detroit Lions are playing meaningful football on what's going to be January 1st, and I like Detroit to win this game. I don't look if they make it to the playoffs. I'm not buying them for any sort of surprise playoff run, but I think this is a very important building block for them because it's following a pattern of growth that you want to see, especially for teams like Detroit who have just been down in the dumps for ever. So I like Detroit at home here against Chicago.
I'm going to call for the upset Chicago Bears. They haven't won since they beat the Patriots on a Monday night back in October. Detroit was on a stretch of going 6-1, but then they got manhandled by Carolina last week. And they're such an emotional team. I think maybe the bubble has burst, so I'll take the Bears in a mild upset.
Next, we have Denver at Kansas City, and the first post-Nathaniel Hackett game. And, the interesting thing about all this is that, and I've been as harsh on Russell Wilson as anyone. And look, his play has certainly deserved criticism. There's no doubt about it. But there's the story that came out about him having this office and yada yada yada, all that stuff, and kind of people jumped on it and piled on the guy a little bit, and a lot of Broncos players, especially offensive players, have come out the last few days and really defended him. Which, again, I don't think any of the criticism of his play is speaking towards his character. I think we both believe he's phony at times because, well, his words speak for themselves. You can't, this isn't an assumption. We're just basing it on things that he has done. But his team seemed to, I don't know, be really supporting him. Whether or not they just realize they don't have a choice, moving forward, or that he's truly just he's having a bad season, and whether or not it gets fixed is besides the point. Anyways, you would think I would be talking all this to pick them. No, not a chance. Denver is not going to beat Kansas City, although I don't think the 14 or whatever the spread is. I think it's like 14. I think that's going to be covered by Kansas City. I like Denver to keep it well within that, but Kansas City at home.
Kansas City, because they're still pressing to be the number seed, then they're going to win this game and then watch Monday night when the Bills, and see what happens at that point. Cincinnati, Buffalo City seem to have just kind of distanced themselves from the rest of the AFC, but in this contest, I'll go Kansas.
All right, Arizona at Atlanta. Flip a coin. I'll take Atlanta. That's it.
Man, what a matchup this is. There's some real ugly matchups this weekend, aren't there? I mean, Arizona, Atlanta, it's like, who cares? Quarterbacks, teams that really never contended this year. Yeah, give me Atlanta at home.
We get some sour matchups, but it really paid at the end. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it really, like, we get obviously Cincinnati on Monday, but we also get Minnesota at Green Bay, which is always good. And then, of course, classic Baltimore hosting Pittsburgh. That's not, it's not quite the same matchup, that it had been in recent history. But San Francisco at the Raiders. The Raiders obviously moving on to Jarrett Stidham. There was a report yesterday that Derek Carr may end up being ultimately released. I don't know how true that is, but needless to say, there's a lot of things going on in Las Vegas. I don't think that it's going to be any any assistance in them trying to beat the 49ers. Regardless if everything was rosy, I'd still pick the 49ers like I'm picking them here. So San Francisco.
God bless Jarrett Stidham. Here's the first start of your career. Now you're facing the best defensive football in the San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, the 49ers just keep rolling.
Jets at Seattle. Going back to Mike White, I think that's a big deal for New York, and I like them to win this game against the Seahawks. So give me the Jets. And again, that makes me throw up in my mouth.
Seattle's plummeting, to say the least, and I think Mike White will put up enough points to win on the road. I'll take the Jets.
All right, we got the Rams at the Chargers and the who the hell cares bowl. Like, I mean, really, no one cares. I mean, at this point, celebrities have left the Rams because, well, they haven't been competitive all season, and we question every week, who the hell are Chargers fans and where are they? We don't know. But in this case, I do think the Chargers have started to play some really good football the last couple weeks. And the Rams are the Rams. And I don't buy too much into that 51-point outburst against the Broncos. So give me LA Chargers.
Yep, I'll take the Chargers as well. They're fighting to maybe be the top wildcard team in the AFC, which would mean they would play at Jacksonville or at Tennessee in wildcard weekend. So they're still playing for something. They've played through a lot of injuries this year, and I think they'll take care of business against the Rams. I'll take the Chargers.
Next, we have NFC North, Minnesota at Green Bay. It's remarkable that the Packers are even alive at this point. It really is. Mm-hmm. I mean, and all they have to do is win out and have Washington lose one of two games. And if they lose their game this week, then all they have to do is win out. I don't think they're going to win. I got the Vikings on the road coming into Green. I don't know. The Vikings right now is the regular season, but they've had a lot of luck, and I don't mean that in like, oh my God, they're so lucky. I mean, like fortune, rather. I think that's more
Mhm.
appropriate because a lot of great teams have a lot of great fortune. I mean, it is what it is. You create those opportunities by being a great team. Um, Minnesota just somehow pulls out these victories, and perhaps maybe that 33-point comeback was, really what's going to push them towards a deep playoff run. The story of Green Bay is nice. The improbable, march towards the playoffs, the rise of the offense and Justin Watson and everything like that. It's sorry, John. it ends. It ends this week, and I think Minnesota takes care of business in Green Bay.
I think Green Bay will win. Minnesota's 11-0 in one-score games this year.
Yeah.
That's I use the word incredible a lot. I should get my thesaurus out and come up with something else, but that's incredible. 11-0 in one-score games. Really, I mean, they've only outscored their opponents, I believe, by 5 points, and they're 12-3. They're right now the number 2 seed in the NFC. I'll take Green Bay, and I think you might see these teams face off in a couple of weeks in a wild card game in Minnesota. A division rival. The games generally are close. Minnesota's defense is porous. I think the Packers' offense getting better incrementally.
Yeah.
I think they'll be able to find a way to win at Lambeau.
Next, Pittsburgh at Baltimore. I like the Steelers in this game just because I think Baltimore, much like a team like Tennessee and Seattle in the NFC, it's just a team that is just nosediving in the second half of the season. Obviously, without Lamar Jackson, what can you expect? But they had issues with Lamar Jackson before, not with him specifically, but I'm saying their defense, to start the season was one of the worst. And that was a carryover from the year before. So I'll take Pittsburgh in this game. Like I said, it's not your classic Pittsburgh-Baltimore matchup, but these two rivals facing off, it's always going to be pretty fun.
I like Pittsburgh. Give credit to Mike Tomlin and that coaching staff. I mean, they've been going back and forth with different quarterbacks, and they lost their best player, TJ Watt, for most of the season, and they've just kind of hung in there and found ways to win. Their defense is still really good. I'll take the Steelers because these teams, it's always a 3-point game. This is going to be like 16, 13, 17, 14, something like that. And they flexed it out to the nighttime. So it's probably going to be even colder and more eerie in Baltimore, but I'll take the Steelers.
All right. And for the sake of it being such a great game, we will pick Monday Night Football, and maybe we will revisit it with any sort of adjustments Monday morning when we're back on the air. But I like Buffalo. This was a tough game to pick, even on the road. Buffalo's won some tough games, having to go on the road, having to travel, having to deal with non-ideal situations. And I think they've proven that they can overcome situations like that. So I think in a big game with the number 1 seed on the line. Now, look, I mean, if Kansas City somehow loses to Denver, maybe the intensity won't be as high for Buffalo, but Buffalo realizes they win this game, they can get ready to rest and get ready for the divisional round because they will end up winning the number 1 seed, and it's going to go a long way in building their confidence moving into the playoffs, having defeated both Kansas City and last year's AFC representative. So I think this is going to be, and I hope it's one of the best games of this. I like Buffalo on the road.
I do too, and I'm falling in love with the Bengals, and more specifically Joe Burrow every week. I see Baby Brady when I see Joe Burrow, and it's kind of fun to see teams like Buffalo and Cincinnati, which at times have been laughingstocks in the NFL, are now 2 of the superpowers in the AFC, along with the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll take Buffalo. I think they're starting to really build their running game quite a bit, but also their pass rush could cause some problems for Cincinnati's offensive line with La'el Collins. They're fine right tackle out for perhaps the rest of the season. That's going to be a concern.
All right. That's it. We picked all the picks, and we did it in time. Real quick before we wrap up, do you have any New Year's resolutions, John? Since it is the last show we're going to do this year, is there anything you're looking forward to in 2023 that besides turning 60, of course?
Yes, I turned 60 in April. I'm just looking to get the hell out of 2022. That's my New Year's resolution. Count down the hours to get out of 2022.
Fair enough, and so hopefully 2023 will be certainly not the year that Tom Brady retires. That's what I'm hopeful for. And to go yet another year in this century with him playing football. My goal is for him to play until I'm 40. So yeah,
okay,
yeah. Which, like you said, maybe here's the thing, John. Maybe he wants to be the oldest player to ever play in the NFL, and in order to do that, I believe he would have to play 2 more seasons after this. I would have to, because he would be 46. No, I'm sorry. He would have to play 3 more seasons after this, because then he would surpass George Blanda, who, we know played until he was 48, but, he was a kicker for much of his time in his 40s. But I think that might be something that, maybe he has his sights on, because I've said it before. That each week that we move forward, I just don't get the sense that he has any, feel to retire. Like, it doesn't seem that way. But then again, I've been wrong many times before. So, all right, that's going to do it for us here today and in 2022 and for this week. So thank you everyone who has tuned in, either here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, through the podcast. However, we appreciate it. And of course, we look forward to bringing in yet another new year on FPC Radio Live starting January the 2nd. Yes, folks, we will be back the day after New Year's Day. So thank you, everyone, and we will talk to you then.